Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers. This movie was a lot better than I remember.
I never thought Halloween 4 would be part of my life. This is just the sort of movie that's deep enough in a franchise that I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to watch that. There's nothing there for me. But being forced to go through 2 and 3 and now 4, this comes out as a strong contender so far as the best sequel to the original Halloween movie. I feel pretty confident actually that it is. And that might come out in our final cut, and you stay tuned for that. But one question I had for you during the reaction was what's kind of like the general consensus on this movie? And Wikipedia has a nice like overview of what happened, where it says the film garnered negative critical reception upon release. A New York Times film critic said it abandoned the original film's strengths, saying suspense and psychological horror have given way to superhuman strength and resilience. A Variety film critic said it's a no-frills workman-like picture. Like, it doesn't really do anything, it just does what it has to. A Washington Post critic said it's very much the cheap knockoff of its prototype, but not half as visceral. An Empire film critic said,
I could see that.
It's incredible that the film could be so closely patterned on Carpenter's still thrilling original movie, and yet be so stupid, unscary, and plotting as Halloween 4 is. And then they go into the more positive reception. One critic says the movie is tight, has good murders, and kicked my butt ending. That should be a hyphenated compound, Nick, but they forgot to add the hyphenated compound. That means syntactically it's kind of challenging to read. This is why you proofread. My goodness, The Shape is back and in good form. This is my favorite Halloween next to the first one. IGN said Halloween 4 Return of Michael Myers stands out as the best second film in the entire series. Dread Central, Halloween 4 is a strong sequel, horror film and Halloween movie. And DVD Talk, despite its flaws, Halloween 4 is one of the best slashers from the late 1980s. Wow. Standing out
from the late 1800s.
From the 1800s. It might be the only slasher. Interesting stuff. So you really run the gamut from people who are like, this is pales in comparison to the original, to people saying this is actually maybe kind of a hidden gem of a movie.
I wouldn't necessarily say that this is the best movie in the 80s. Like I can name a couple movies out there that top this 100%.
Slashers.
Now, slasher films. Now, this movie obviously has issues. It's definitely somewhat of a carbon copy. Doesn't really do a lot with having something to say necessarily. But the things that I appreciate about the movie are more so or less kind of showing less of Michael. I mean, we still do get like full body shots and stuff like that, but Halloween 2, its main big issue was just these long shots of Michael walking.
Kind of demystified Michael a bit.
Like, I guess with the recent requels, they kind of do that too, but not to the extent that each two took.
Yeah. And in the requels, they infuse him with enough brutality and power that when you see him, it's like, oh no. But in 2, he didn't have really the power. He was just kind of an unintimidating thing walking toward you and doing this to you when you're going through a window. You know, so the requels are kind of maybe adding some life and power back into Myers. But this definitely did correct a fault of the second one, which was just, you're right, showing way too much, kind of losing some of the mystery, kind of losing some of the tension and psychological horror and going straight for slasher. This movie does something different. It is more of a slow burn. It isn't the psychological thriller that the first one was. I agree with one of the film critics who said that. It doesn't feel like it has the like eternal quality of the first Halloween movie. But if we're talking about a sequel here, and if we want to talk about a horror movie sequel that does more than you expect it to, and kind of has some charm to it all the way through, and some respect for the genre, and a really in an ending that really shocked me, and that I felt was really dark, because that little girl wins your heart. You just want her to be safe, and then there's this big reveal, and it's like, oh, this is like the first time we feel the tragedy of somebody becoming this killer, awakening it in their blood. We didn't feel that with Michael, but now we feel the tragedy, and that's just like great.
Danielle Harris does an amazing job.
Good kid actor.
I believe this was her. I believe this was her debut film.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did. She did an amazing job, especially as a kid actor or actress. Yeah.
All the actors were good. Even the main girl, I think she did a good job at kind of playing a character close to Laurie Strode, being, again, like I said in the reaction, this kind of good intentioned person who's still figuring out that the world doesn't care if you're a good person. Things will still go wrong, and you just kind of have to brave it. I liked that character. She did a good job. I think she played it right. Donald Pleasance is back, the same as ever.
Yeah,
just great. Just everything he says is it's just so fun.
Love Donald Pleasance to death. Yeah, it's always nice to have Donald Pleasance in a Halloween movie. Michael Myers' mask looks off, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the moment we saw it, I pointed that out, and you're like, "Yep, you're gonna see a lot of that." And yeah, it is different. It's not as fleshy and weird.
There's even one scene where it's completely different from the mask that we get.
Yeah, I almost thought somebody else came into the scene, like a janitor, to save her, and I was like, "Oh wait, that's supposed to be Michael." Okay, whatever. But yeah, and I kind of I don't really know why the mask. I mean, maybe you can say the mask, if you want to work for the movie, just the production changed. The mask is different because it's years later and it's not the same one. But I like that fleshy, flappy, gross mask that just sits on his face. It's so utilitarian. He just threw it on. Mm-hmm. This one has hair that's like pushed into the top of it, and it just it looks kind of silly. It's not the same. It really isn't.
It's a little bloated.
Yeah. Does another person play Michael in this one?
Yes. This time it is played by George P. Wilbur.
Okay.
I believe I got that name.
There's something about the build and the lightness on his feet that wasn't maybe quite as intimidating as the original Myers as well, if we're really nitpicking.
Yeah, his walk is a little off.
Yeah.
A little.
It came off as like clumsy, right? We said it looked like an alien pretending to be a person sometimes,
mm-hmm.
Which could be really unnerving and cool if you play it kind of close to the chest. But yeah, maybe it was more of a Myers is slow and clumsy in this one. And in the first movie, he was unpredictable and almost ethereal. He would just show up.
I don't necessarily think that anybody could get Nick Castle's walk.
Yeah.
The way that Nick Castle does it, except for James Jude Courtney, who does an amazing job. He took the time. This is obviously the recent Michael Myers, who has played Michael Myers now 3 times, which is a lot if you think about it. Yeah, I can't wait to see your thoughts on Halloween 5.
Does it have a subtitle?
Yeah. Okay, I was right.
Halloween 5. Just kidding. He's back.
Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers.
They really keep being like, okay, this is it. He blew up. Okay, wait, no, there's a whole firing squad, and they aimed at him. They shot him way more than 6 times with really high-powered weapons, and then he fell into the earth and was buried. It's it, right? And then they just keep bringing him back for Michael.
And with the power of Hollywood, they resurrect Michael Myers.
Oh my god.
With the power of money.
Oh, Nick is horrible.
Donald Pleasance is like, no!
Please, no. Yeah.
No more.
So I don't know if I was just expecting too little from this movie. I don't think so. I really think this was a solid sequel. As far as just expecting a sequel not to capture the lightning in a bottle that Halloween was, which again feels like this eternal classic. Yeah, I'm not gonna get that again. I know I won't. But this as a sequel, it nailed it. They really introduced some interesting ideas. They kind of rebrand and update some things from the original. I just really liked it. And by Act 3, when they gave us the big reveal, I realized that this movie actually plays a role in interpreting not just like Michael is again this temporary manifestation of an eternal evil, but this idea that we're going through cycles of violence. Because in this movie taken alone, Michael died, and he was almost reborn through the blood of this little girl. And it's just
that's an amazing
that's a
end.
great send-off.
It's
that's
like
a Devil's Rejects ending. Don't mess with it, right? Like, they don't. That's a great. I like that.
I got
send-off.
chills.
Yeah.
I had chills when that scene.
And you see Donald with his gun. He points at the little girl, and he's like, "I don't want to, but I need to do this unthinkingly."
And then when the gun was slapped out of his hands, he just fell. He was like,
it's not over. This won't end. Oh, great.
Yeah,
that adds to the
so
original.
good.
That makes it like, oh, man. Great. Really, really appreciate that moment.
Even though we don't really need to add to the original, but here we are.
Yeah, you don't need to, right? But if a sequel is going to come out, it's like this adds weight to it.
But this
and it redeems this idea that Laurie is related to Michael, right? Which is kind of a dumb idea thrown into
fun.
2. Now, at least, it's like, oh, okay, there's some narrative stuff you can do with this.
2 felt more like an expansion pack upon 1.
Yeah.
And not necessarily a good one.
2 felt like the end
Although
of
I do
Resident
like
Evil
2.
Village, where it's just like, and now you've got loads of guns and you run through the village and just fire down. It was kind of the action version of the original. It like technically it keeps the plot going, but it just is very different.
Yeah.
And
there are moments in that movie that I love so much. Like when the nurse is like looking for the doctor, the head doctor, and she like turns him over in his his chair, and he's just like got a needle sticking in his eye. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there.
But like him getting shot in the eyes,
both
and
eyes,
just bleeding.
Oh yeah,
I like that.
Shouldn't Michael be blind?
Shouldn't he? He's not. They retcon that.
Ah, okay.
Oddly enough, but yeah. So he was in a coma all that time, and then somebody decided to mention, "Oh, he has relatives." What? And there you go. There's the. But Jason Voorhees smells premarital sex and drugs. Oh, he's resurrected. Michael Myers, a relative.
Family. Is that how Michael would sound? That's good. Good stuff. Gold. This is a dumb question. What happened to Laurie canonically that she wasn't in this movie?
I believe they answer that in Halloween 5.
Okay, but they don't even touch on it here. They don't say why she isn't the mother to her daughter.
If I will answer that question in kind next episode.
Right. Interesting.
If they don't answer it in the next movie, then I will definitely answer that question for you.
Okay. Thought maybe I missed a dialogue moment, but it seems like they just don't touch on it.
No.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no.
You were saying at the beginning, I just want to wrap around and agree with you here. The tone, the atmosphere in the first act felt really good. Like, that's kind of when I knew that we were like, all right, we're on the right track here. Because they didn't have like the slow zoom into the pumpkin, right? Like we normally get. But we did have a lot of stage setting just like the original. This beautiful suburbia, all of these kids running around at the time of their life on Halloween.
Feels nice.
We know that fall day. We've been there. We're like, oh, this is life. Everyone during celebrating this holiday, there's candy and people running around, and it's just like there's something so special about autumn, especially Halloween. It works. It furnishes the world in such a nice way, and they're really sitting with that. And I really like that because the original captured that. The original wasn't just a dark movie about scary stuff. It was letting you see beauty, like just kind of the beauty of these teenagers trying to live their lives and kind of the tiny trifles they had faced with then real life or death decisions. This movie played with that too, but this one also, it had some beauty in it. It had like a nice, almost maternal relationship between the big sister and the little adopted sister, and teen drama versus actual life or death circumstances. I don't know. I really feel like this is maybe a more faithful sequel than some people were saying. Maybe if this movie sits with me much longer, or if I rewatch Halloween, I'll see the gulf between them. But for right now, following up Halloween 2 and Halloween 3, this is kind of a home run of a sequel. I didn't think I'd say it. There's no part of me thought I'd be sitting here, like Halloween 4,
Right.
man.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised.
I liked it though.
To be
I
honest.
thought it was really good. It's sitting at a low rating on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes though, so I'm curious
Yeah.
to hear from our viewers. I really want to know what their stance is on it.
I don't think it's the best movie of all time. Obviously, it's a fun popcorn flick though. It's fun to like add on to like the Halloween list of movies on Halloween night and just like pop it on or whatever.
It's almost, sorry to interrupt you, it's like a more lighthearted, more party version of the original Halloween,
Yeah.
right? It's less about like
Yeah.
teenagers dying and like evil hunting suburbia. It's more like kind of fun horror, but also has high stakes. Yeah, it's a good party Halloween.
But it's definitely, you know, your cable made for cable Halloween movie. It does some things better than Halloween 2 for
Yeah.
sure. It's got a good kid actor. All the actors all around are really good. It's got an interesting concept. I like the, you know, boarding up in the house, which is really like a nice thing. There wasn't like any overbearing tropes. Brady kind of made some stupid decisions just standing there reloading.
Yeah, it did
And-
have some of those moments where it's like, come on, man, come on. This isn't tension building anymore. It's frustrating because we know in real life there are more options than you're.
But there wasn't a lot of that.
In Halloween 2, there
probably
was
like-
tons of that, right? There were a lot of those moments. But in
Yeah.
this one, it was, I even commented during the reaction, oh, they're really making smart decisions. The police station is like, no, sorry, I don't believe you that Michael Myers is out. And then hang up. They're like, oh, we're on our own. It's like, no, they're like, really? All right, we're sending everybody. They board up the house.
Right.
Donald Pleasant, I know it's Dr. Loomis. He gathers them all up. They barricade everything. They've got shotguns trained at the door. They're doing everything right. And that helps show you how intimidating Myers really is. I think the interesting thing to point out, I wish I looked this up beforehand. Halloween is the only Halloween directed by John Carpenter, at least out of the 4 we've watched, and the only one written by him.
No,
He
he wrote Halloween 2.
he is oh yes he did, okay, yeah, okay, so but he didn't direct it. He wrote Halloween 1 and 2. Halloween 3 he's an uncredited writer on, which means he probably was in the writer's room kind of giving people tips but not writing the script. That was Tommy Lee Wallace, who also directed it. And Halloween 4, zero creative input from a writer or director chair from John Carpenter.
Yeah, he was like, nah, I'm
And
done.
this is the one that feels like the best predecessor for me to the original Halloween. And it's just interesting. The ones he has worked on to me have kind of been like, oh man, I don't know about this. But Halloween 4, it worked for me.
The second one was just like, it was reluctant. Like,
Yeah.
I have to do this. I'm obligated contractually. So, okay, let's do it, I guess.
And for some reason, Halloween 2 is still the highest rated Halloween film after Halloween 1, at least on IMDb, which is interesting.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's definitely, I did really like it when I watched it. I did think it was pretty fun. But
Yeah.
now that I've seen 4, I feel like that's the best version of this. Also, I like the tagline to Halloween 2. Halloween 2's tagline, more of the night he came home. Yeah, I guess. He came back to finish what they'll never forget. The nightmare isn't over. That's a better one. The nightmare isn't over. That's good.
There wasn't necessarily a setting for Halloween 4. Honestly.
What do you mean? It was the
like-
same setting as Halloween.
A Halloween 1.
Yeah, right. Suburbia.
Yeah, suburbia, but it doesn't. I don't know if it necessarily works. Like it's more of the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see
it,
that.
It doesn't. It doesn't do like as a sequel. Wouldn't you agree that if you're making a sequel, you should do more? You should ante up, add more upon
Yeah.
the
I
original.
do agree. And during my reaction, I was going to say this could have been Halloween 2 because they did do more. It felt like the whole town came together this time, where it didn't in Halloween 1. It felt like we had the vigilante groups patrolling. It felt like the body count was a little bit higher. It felt like the stakes were higher. It felt like there were these historic mistakes that Loomis didn't want to make again, and finally people were on his
Right.
side. And I was like, man, it feels like they amped it up, and it also is willing to move from the neighborhood right into the schoolhouse, right, which was just a nice kind of side setting. This felt like such a nice wrap up, and it felt like it succeeded to me
Yeah.
where maybe it kind of laid up in the second one, and the third one just completely spiraled into this like surreal. What if we enter this kind of meta narrative where the movie never even really happened the way that you thought it did, and this is finally returning kind of to like the original stomping grounds of it. It feels like it returns to the same themes that I liked in the first one, and then it amps it up, and that's kind of, as far as sequels go, that works for me.
I don't know. Dick Warlock or George P. Wilbur?
That would be the portrayal in 2 versus 4.
Yes.
That's tough, because there were moments in 2 that I really thought removed so much strength and intimidation. And there were moments in...
Honestly, I think that it's just because of the way that it was shot.
That's possible,
the direction
yeah. That is possible.
definitely led to
Yeah.
decreasing.
If we're
his
taking that into
terrified
account,
factor.
how the filming was done to frame him, then 4 was definitely more intimidating to me. But there were moments that still shone through, like we talked about. This feels like a clumsier, kind of scrawnier, right, incarnation of this apparently eternal evil, and that kind of, might be a step back.
My lord, it really is a, like, now that I think about it, it really is a beat for beat H1,
Yeah.
kind of knockoff of a film, because at the end he just gets shot a bunch of
Right.
times, but not this time, not by one gun, it's just by a lot. I don't know. I think that Michael Myers being blown up in a fiery, like a flaming inferno, and then him walking
Yeah.
for his last moments is horrifying as shit.
is.
It's like, die, for the love of God, die.
Yeah, I agree.
And then
I think that
Yeah.
does that introduce that kind of or like it reinforced the really ominous note we got at the end of the first one, which is like, this guy might not be human, and that was a huge reveal in the first one. Like, there's something inhuman about this guy, and then by the
but
second,
there was also
you really
that,
get that.
like, there was also that, like, just like, oh my God, just pick a side of the room. Like, I know you're blind
That's
and everything,
that's
but you're
my
not,
point, right?
you're not fucking stupid.
At a high level, the writers' room got it right. They're like, yeah, that is maybe the most effective and symbolic way we can off this guy, but the execution of it, just the lame video game, like moving back and forth and open up the can, close it, open it up, distract him, like tossing rocks to distract somebody. It removes so much autonomy and intimidation from him that it's just
Yeah.
a very silly thing to do. They that could have been scrapped, that part, because it wasn't tension building. It was kind of detraction from suspense, which is what you really want, not that kind of frustrating back and forth thing that we got from him. We want him to be cunning and smart, not
Right.
whatever that is, not just like an automata. Like, remember in Fear Street we were
Like
talking
a
about
dumb.
they only follow
Yeah.
the blood trails carefully painted on the mall floor. And it's like, okay, yeah, like, it's a filmic technique. You go into the writer's room and they're like, this is how they move around, this is the lore, this is like the kind of the metaphysical basis for these things. It's great. Introduce that, give us the world building. But when you see it in action, that they're just like matchbox cars on this carefully painted trail, and that they can squirt them with blood, guns,
Removes any
no
tension
tension whatsoever, right? Because we even saw the moment where the kids were standing in the hall, and these
Right.
apparently eternal, unstoppable killers just walk right past them to the bathroom. Because the blood trail wasn't, like, I guess they weren't interfering with it. It's just, yeah, it's like, okay, so you're pretty much always safe. You're pretty much completely safe if you have enough blood to go around. It's just a very silly idea. And yeah, this does a good job. I think 4 did a good job of avoiding that type of kind of debuffed killer, if you want to use video game terminology for
Right.
it, where you try to expand on the mystery that actually made this character so great to begin with. There's a reason Halloween is considered a Criterion classic kind of piece of art,
This may
because
be-
it does tap into that scary evil lurking beneath suburbia. The sequels didn't quite do that, right?
this may be doing a little bit of work for the movie, but maybe taking two slugs to the fucking dome kind of like jarred his
Yeah, I like that
brain
interpretation.
a little.
Maybe so. Sure. I mean, that's understandable if that's the case.
Yeah,
The poor guy's been
he did
killed
some
and brought back so many times. Of course, he's
confusion.
going to be a bit a bit discombobulated by the fourth movie. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's our answer.
Yeah.
Wrapping it up.
Yeah.
What numerical score can you settle on for this? I'll bring up the ones you
Well,
gave. All right. First Halloween, we both gave it a 9 out of 10. Pretty much in agreement. That's one of our highest rated films in general on this list. Halloween 2, you gave a 7. I did as well. And Season of the Witch, you gave 6.5. I did as well. So what are you thinking for 4?
like I like the aura of the film, but at the same time, it's more of the same. But without any of the charm of the original. It's not a 9, obviously. Definitely not like on par with the original film.
Maybe it would help
The acting's good.
better than Season of the Witch, in your opinion.
I actually really like Season of the Witch.
Yeah, it does have kind of some charm going for it, right? Because it's just such an absurd. It's so crazy that it was even made. The story just retconned the entire, the entire first and second movie. It is.
But I do like the design of Michael in bandages. I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
cool. That's probably like one of my favorite designs that they've done for him. H4 a 6.
Oh, really?
Like, don't get me wrong. I know people are probably like, "What?" But it doesn't really do much, does it? It doesn't really add anything. It's just more of the same. Within my the fibers in my bone, I cannot say that it is wholeheartedly better than H2, although I do find a lot of issues with H2. There's something about that movie in particular
Yeah.
where I'm just like, this is a fun movie. Although it's not the best movie, and there's some things in it where it's like, really, his sister, like, that's stupid.
That is, yeah, like
I don't know.
narratively almost incapacitates the franchise to me. So I agree. Okay, so you gave it a 6 out of 10, and your big gripe here seems to be it does the same thing and not as well. I didn't see that so much as like a writing hang up or like a lack of effort. It seemed like it was more of a symbolic. Halloween's kind of about this recurrence of evil every Halloween night, right? He tries to do the same thing.
right.
He tries to right some wrong, and his motives are kind of nebulous. We aren't quite sure what they are, and it kind of taps into that just vague fear of other people in the 70s. With these creepy just serial killers going rampant. Nobody understands why this type of crime emerged out of nowhere when it wasn't really there in the past, and Halloween just taps into that and really crystallizes it. And the sequel was kind of a Friday the 13th slasher action thing that kind of dethroned itself quite a bit. And then it also introduced this really incapacitating idea that Laurie was somehow related to Michael. And suddenly, this motiveless crime, which is kind of central to the theme of the movie, has a motive. And a really clear one, right? And it to me, it kind of puts the movie on the rails. Again, the sequel kind of disrupted the narrative. It kind of wasn't quite faithful to what made the first one great. It did something new that was good and valuable, but was it kind of plugged into the same genre that it created and kind of the derivations of the genre it created? Yeah, sort of. It did kind of take some cheap shots. It had some classic moments. It was entertaining. It's a good action-y version of Halloween. Again, a good party-ish version of Halloween. But yeah, it really did kind of cripple the narrative with this idea of this relationship that added a motive to what was important to be a motiveless crime. In 4, that's redeemed. In 4, the theme returns. In 4, the vague, nebulous force of evil haunting suburbia comes back. We really hammer home this feeling of evil kind of bubbling up through suburbia. And with the cards they're given, Michael again becomes this eternal force of evil who's just kind of, and they introduce this in, one thing I liked in part 2, the whole Samhain dynamic. It was really clumsily introduced with this like weird like crime scene thing with a knife on the, and he wrote the word down like, hey, by the way, here's what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But I like that theme. That comes back 2 and 4, and it really leans into this eternal evil manifesting itself in different people over and over again. That cyclical nature is represented in like returning to the same setting of Halloween 1. Mm-hmm. To me, that just works. Thematically, it works. Symbolically, it works. In the script, it works. And more than that, we get characters that feel right. We get that kind of teenager trifles are life or death situations run up against actual life or death situations. I like that irony. This town is there. We get to see more of it. It comes together. And they really tie a bow on this supposed relationship between Laurie and now Laurie's daughter and Michael. And they add weight to it. It isn't just kind of a lazy screenwriting thing last second. It is one of the most tragic endings to what should have been maybe just a trilogy that we have, where now, just like the first one, it ends with kind of an uncertain what's going to happen to the killer. And it's
still a motive, though.
It is a motive, yeah.
It's so
I guess the best mystique, possible version of dealing with the bad hand they were dealt by that introduction in 2. I think that's my concrete feeling.
Yeah.
So really quickly, 7.25. I've never done a 0.25 before, but it's 0.25 better than a Halloween 2 in my rating, because I give Halloween 2 a 7. It's not a 7.5 movie. I'm kind of questioning how high I rated Halloween 2 to begin with, but I'm going to give this a 7.25 in my final verdict.
I don't know. I think the Ben Tramer scene at H2 was pretty funny, but it added like they killed a kid by accident. They thought, oh, that's Michael Myers, and then some police car just comes and fucking rails him, and it explodes. H4, they have a bunch of kids playing a prank on the police officers.
Such a bad idea.
It's such a stupid idea. And then we kind of get a reoccurring Ben Tramer moment where the lynch mob kind of kill another person by accident.
I like seeing that these are the effects of fear mongering in this town. They know this is in their history. They're terrified about it happening again, and for all of their good intentions, they mess up, right? And I really like that. That's something that it couldn't have happened in the first one, right? Because that was the debut of this crime happening, but now it could, and I like that. That feels like the right narrative next chapter. Okay. Overall, I think I did not expect 4 movies into this franchise that we would find such a competent follow-up, but I really did like it. It's got nothing on the original, obviously, but it at least understands it, and it's interesting that was possible without John Carpenter's participation in the script or in directing it. He probably produced it. He probably had some creative oversight, but I'm just surprised that this was not at all his brainchild. Do you think, will this be a public-facing episode? What do you think?
Do you want it to be a public-facing episode?
Maybe I'll see you in the editor's chair. I'll decide that. Maybe we can have one every now and again, just public-facing for people to see what's going on Patreon. But if it isn't, we appreciate Patreons tuning in, watching this, supporting us monthly. It goes a very long way.
Well, thank you guys so much for sticking around for our after-movie discussion. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And as always, stay killer.
All right.